What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here of the Bottom Line View, back with another episode of the top 100 players in the NFL for 2017. Now, this is my opinion on who are the top 100 players in the NFL heading into the 2017 NFL season. This list was made using my knowledge of last year's play, stats, and advanced stats, while also looking ahead into next season and judging who really are the best players when they step foot on the field week 1 of the 2017 regular season. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on my top 100 list. This is episode number 4, numbers 40 to 21. Hope you guys enjoy. Starting at number 40, we have one of my favorite, probably my favorite actually, running back in the NFL, and that is LeSean McCoy of the Buffalo Bills. Now, being a Patriots fan, I love to hate this guy, but I also love to cheer this guy on, most of the time because he's on my fantasy team. LeSean McCoy is absolutely one of the most exciting running backs and runners in the NFL, and that we've seen in a very, very long time. I love LeSean McCoy's style. It's almost a poor man's version of Barry Sanders, and that is a compliment at the end of the day. I mean, Barry Sanders, we're talking about the greatest running back of all time, arguably. LeSean McCoy has a very big influence and looks a lot like Barry Sanders when he is running with the football. He had 1,200 yards this season with a 5.4 yards per carry, 13 touchdowns, also contributed in the pass game with 50 receptions, 356 yards, and a touchdown. Shady McCoy has really been one of the better running backs in the NFL ever since his Philadelphia days. He proved people wrong that it wasn't just Philadelphia, wasn't just the coach, wasn't just the system, but he came over to Buffalo and he's shined, absolutely. McCoy is a great running back, and the thing about McCoy that I think separates him from a lot of running backs is it doesn't matter who you put in front of him. It doesn't matter who's blocking for him. It doesn't matter what the scheme is. LeSean McCoy can make plays with the football because he is so explosive, he's so agile, and he's so hard to take down that it doesn't really matter who's blocking. He can make the first guy miss pretty much every single time, and that's something I really admire about LeSean McCoy's game. I think he's still an elite running back in this league. He's proven to do it both in the pass and the run game with multiple touchdowns this past season. I expect him to have another very strong season with a strong offensive line and running game in front of him. I do think the loss of his offensive coordinator will hurt him a little bit, but I do think that LeSean McCoy will be back in the top 100 next year, and he's probably my favorite back in the league. At number 39, T.Y. Hilton, wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. He comes in as the wide receiver 6 for the top 100 in 2017. He had 91 receptions, over 1,400 yards, and 6 touchdowns. T.Y. Hilton is one of the best deep threats in the entire NFL. This guy proves people wrong year after year after year. They said he couldn't get it done without Andrew Luck. He got it done. They said he couldn't get it done without a secondary wide receiver. He got it done. They said he couldn't get it done because he's too small. He got it done. T.Y. Hilton simply led the league in receiving yards last season. A very consistent target for across the entire NFL, but for Andrew Luck. He's been his #1 guy since Andrew Luck's taken the hold of that position in Indianapolis. And T.Y. Hilton has really proven to be an elite receiver in this league, a guy that's very overlooked because of his size, because maybe that he plays for the Colts. I'm not really sure why he's so overlooked, but you look at his stats, 91 receptions, 1,400 yards. Now, this guy doesn't really get in the end zone very often, but when he does, it's a sexy looking play. It's usually a long pass play down the field. It's usually him maybe making a couple guys miss or just blowing by somebody. T.Y. Hilton has elite speed. He has elite ability to get open, and he has elite chemistry with his quarterback, which allows him to be one of the elite receivers in the game, coming in at number 39 on the top 100. At number 38, I have a surprise name to the top 100, probably for some people. That is Brandon Graham. And he ranks in as the 5th best edge player in the entire NFL, coming in with 59 tackles, 5.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. Now, those numbers aren't sexy, but if you look at Brandon Graham's ability to disrupt passers this season. He ranked as Pro Football Focus's #1 guy in pressures in the entire league last year. He also created the most havoc for a quarterback on a per-play basis in the entire league. So that in itself deserves for Brandon Graham to be amongst the elite edge rushers in the entire NFL. Now, he didn't get the great sack totals, but I expect those sacks to go up. With the ability he played with this past season with a really crappy secondary behind him, I think Brandon Graham will once again get to the quarterback, but with some more consistency. He'll be able to take him down to the ground a little bit more, and actually the casual fan will recognize how good this guy is. Because Brandon Graham, if you know him, if you've seen him play, you know how good he is, especially at getting after the quarterback. But something that's overlooked about Brandon Graham's game is his versatility. He's pretty big, but he has that flexibility of being able to play an outside linebacker role, even in a 3-4. He could play a 4-3 defensive end. He's very good against the run, stout in that area of his game, and he can also rush the passer, as I've already mentioned. So Brandon Graham is a player that I put on my top 10 most underrated players in the league list, and I really think that he is underrated, and I think that he'll prove his value in 2017 as an elite player for the second season in a row. At number 37, I have Eric Weddle. What can you say about Eric Weddle that hasn't already been said? 89 tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 4 interceptions. Eric Weddle reminds me of a safety straight out of the 70s. He wears no gloves. He has a ridiculous beard. He's a little bit undersized, but the man is tough, and he's tough as nails. I love watching Eric Weddle play. He's a great leader on the field. He's a ferocious tackler, ferocious football player, and he's very, very physical for a guy that stands at 5'9". One of the things that you also have to admire about Eric Weddle is he's probably the smartest safety in the entire league, which allows his frame of 5'9" and not really elite speed to get around and be in position on every single play. Eric Weddle will be able to play for many more years because he is so elite at thinking the game of football. I think that his fit with Baltimore was perfect. He proved it last year to being Pro Football Focus's #1 safety in the entire league. I think that he'll be amongst the elite once again next year. I have him as the safety number 4 and number 37 on the top 100. At number 36, I have Damon Harrison, also known as Snacks, the defensive lineman 4 for the New York Giants. He played 16 games last year at 86 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. Damon Harrison, you basically sign this guy and you put him in your defense, no matter if it's a 4-3 or 3-4, and he stops the run. You don't have to worry about the run anymore. Just put Snacks out there, and he's going to gobble whatever running back it is right up. Whether it was Le'Veon Bell, whether it was David Johnson, whether it was LeSean McCoy, whether it was Ezekiel Elliott, which he showed multiple times this year, Damon Harrison can take a run game out of the game completely by himself. He reminds me a lot of Vince Wilfork in a way. Damon Harrison is a great player, the best run stopper in the entire NFL, which deserves a ton of respect. The reason why he's so high is because he's the best run stopper in the league. He could stop any run game from happening basically by himself. He can take on double teams. He can take a guard right out of a play. He can push a center right back into the quarterback. He can make a couple sacks for you. He can rush the passer occasionally with that brute strength that he has. And 86 tackles for a defensive lineman, and specifically a defensive tackle. That is absolutely bananas. So Damon Harrison ranks 36 on the top 100 this season. At number 35, I have Travis KELCE, the second best tight end, in my opinion, in the NFL. Last season, he led the league in receptions for tight ends with 85. He also led the league for tight ends in yards with 1,125. He had 13.2 yards per catch and 4 touchdowns on the season. Travis KELCE is that go-to guy for the Kansas City offense. You can't really say that there are many tight ends in the NFL that are the go-to guys in their offense. You could say maybe it's Gronk, because you also have Edelman, and now Cooks is throwing into the fold. You have Greg Olsen, who definitely I would consider the go-to guy in his offense. You also have maybe Delaney Walker. I wouldn't really consider Jordan Reed the go-to guy. So looking at Travis KELCE, he's the go-to guy. He's the #1 target. He is the man in Kansas City. And even with having the reality show Catching KELCE, the guy still produced on the football field, so you got to respect that. If he does take his temper down in a couple of situations this year, I would probably even have him a little bit higher. I don't really like his off the field and even sometimes on the field attitude, but sometimes he shows up and he's just too athletic and too talented to ignore. He's great after the catch. He's very athletic for a tight end his size. He can break multiple tackles. He runs great routes and has great hands. What else can you ask from Travis Kelce other than another great year in 2017? At number 34, I have his teammate in Justin Houston, again of the Kansas City Chiefs, coming in as the edge player number 4. He had 21 tackles, 4 sacks, and a forced fumble in 2017. Now, that doesn't seem like big numbers for Justin Houston. That's because he didn't play very many games. So I had to try and balance out where I put Justin Houston on this list. When I look at Justin Houston and when I watch him, he can totally control a game. He could take over a game, and that's why I have him so high. He's still an elite pass rusher in this league. He's had multiple seasons where he's led the league in sacks, and he's had multiple 10-sack seasons, so I can't really ignore that fact. And in a game this year, you could argue that he was the best player on the field, and Von Miller was on the field with him, and these guys were getting dominated. Justin Houston dominated that game against the Broncos. That was maybe the best single-hand performance from a defensive player I saw the entire season. Justin Houston killed the Broncos in that game on Sunday Night Football. I expect him to bounce back in 2017, playing more games, which will add to his sack totals, add to his forced fumble totals, and add to his tackle totals. It'll also get him back in the spotlight of most fans in the NFL. I think Justin Houston's still an all-around great player, specifically as a pass rusher, and I think he'll be back on this list in 2017. At number 33, I have Calais Campbell, defensive lineman 3, formerly of the Arizona Cardinals, now the Jacksonville Jaguars. I rank him as the second best 3-4 defensive end in the league, only behind one guy in Houston, which we'll get to in a later video. He had 53 tackles, 8 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and an interception this year. Calais Campbell showed his versatility as both a run stopper and a pass rusher. 2 forced fumbles this year. He had an interception, which shows his athleticism. And something that Calais Campbell has always really had to his advantage is that he stands at 6'8". 6'8". That's nuts for a defensive lineman, even at the same time. Most defensive linemen are somewhere around 6'3" to like 6'6". But Calais Campbell is one of the tallest, biggest defensive linemen in the league, which allows him to bully in the run game and also allows him to be physical against guards and tackles in the pass game. 8 sacks is pretty good for a 3-4 defensive end. Racking up those 2 forced fumbles. He was the best player on the Cardinals, in my opinion, this season, or one of them at least. He was probably the best defensive player. I should probably leave it at that for the Arizona Cardinals. And now he's leaving the Cardinals, which I think will be a huge hole for the Cardinals to fill defensively. Now going to Jacksonville, where I think he will instantly help their defense because they play a 3-4. They added a lot to their defense this season. I think Calais Campbell is a player that you plug in, and he can completely transform the way that you play in the pass and the run game defensively. So I think Calais Campbell, making plays all over the field, comes in at 33. At number 32, I have Mike Evans, who's quickly becoming one of the most popular players in the NFL for a lot of fans, specifically those in fantasy circles. I see Mike Evans going really high in fantasy drafts right now. Mike Evans, wide receiver number 5 on the top 100, had 96 receptions, 1,300 yards, 13.8 yards per catch, and 12 touchdowns. That's a big reason why he's going so high in those fantasy drafts. But Mike Evans, if you turn on the tape and you watch this guy, there was not one guy that caught more contested balls. There was not one guy that caught more like sexy looking catches in the entire NFL. Like, this guy was making one hands. This guy was making 2-hand, one-on-one, jump over the guy, moss him, and catch a touchdown type of plays. Consistently for his quarterback, Jameis Winston. Mike Evans has definitely developed into a great receiver, and if you actually look at the first 3 seasons of his career, you look at Mike Evans as being one of the best first 3 seasons we've ever seen in the NFL, ranking up there with guys like Odell Beckham, guys like Randy Moss, guys like those type of players, and Mike Evans is right in that conversation. He's currently on the path of becoming one of the best receivers we've seen which is pretty crazy considering he's only wide receiver 5 on this list. Maybe he's still undervalued, but we'll have to see if he can continue to be that elite guy, because he had his first really elite top 3 type of receiver year this year. We'll see if he can do that again next year, and if he does, I'll definitely consider him even higher than 32 on the top 100. At number 31, I have Richard Sherman. Now, I was just talking about a guy that could become elite. This guy has already been elite and then some. Richard Sherman, I would consider probably a Hall of Famer at this point in his career. Comes in as cornerback number 3 on the top 100 at 58 tackles, 13 pass deflections, and 4 picks. Still a very solid year for Richard Sherman. I did see a couple of flaws in his game this time around this past season, which kept him from being maybe the corner 1 this year. But he's very impressive in the run game, which I think not a lot of people give him credit for. But he's so big, and he can kind of bully around receivers at times and get a tackle or 2. He had 58 this year. He's so great. He's probably still the best in the NFL at playing the ball. He's great at deflecting down passes, at getting in the way of receiver trying to make a catch, and of course of intercepting passes. With that cover 3 scheme, Richard Sherman always has his eyes on the quarterback, and there's no scheme that suits his abilities more because he is so good at reading the quarterback. He's so smart of a football player. He's always the quarterbacks really don't want to throw to him at this point in time. I mean, they didn't even want to throw to him in his second year as really being that breakout corner. And now they basically never look to him unless his receiver is somehow wide open. But that almost never happens with Richard Sherman. Maybe he's ranking a little bit lower because he's just been so excellent that we expected. But Richard Sherman is corner 3 and number 31 on the top 100. At number 30, I have a Dallas Cowboy, Sean Lee, linebacker number 3. 15 games, 145 tackles, and 1 pass deflection. He was on pace to lead the league in tackles before Bobby Wagner snatched that from him. But Sean Lee was and came back to be an elite middle linebacker in this league. And Sean Lee really, if you look at the Dallas Cowboys defense, they had a really good year last year in their regular season. Now, they didn't have a great playoff performance, but a huge reason why their regular season numbers, and you look at their stats and their yards and their points given up, huge reason for that was Sean Lee being there for the majority of the season, being there as that leader, being there as the guy that sets the team up, audibles from plays. He's a lot like Luke Kuechly in a way. He's a lot like the elite linebackers in the league. In leadership qualities, he's one of the best. He's so explosive, and he might be the best linebacker against the run in the entire league. He's also really good in zone coverage. He's not the greatest in man coverage, where I think sometimes tight ends can beat him, but he's so good against the run. He can pursue like nobody's business, and I think he truly deserves to be ranked as one of the best linebackers in the league, coming in at number 30. At number 29, I have Earl Thomas, safety number 3 on the top 100. Earl Thomas played 11 games last year, 48 tackles, 10 pass deflections, and 2 interceptions. I've considered Earl Thomas to be the best safety in the NFL for probably 3 years now. I still think he is that when he's consistently playing, but the reason being that he's only safety 3 here is that he played 11 games last year, and that does kind of hurt his ranking a little bit. But when Earl Thomas is on and when Earl Thomas is playing, there's no free safety that can cover more ground than Earl Thomas. There's no safety that you're more afraid of playing against than Earl Thomas probably, because he can pick a pass off, he can take it the distance, he can hit you like a strong safety. He basically hurt Gronk this year, which was shocking. He's so smart. Again, another safety with great intelligence. He is a leader back there, and he's arguably the most important defensive player in the entire league. You see when Earl Thomas isn't playing for the Seattle Seahawks, how much they miss him. And Earl Thomas is absolutely huge to that scheme, that team, and that organization, really. He's arguably the best player on the Seahawks. I think that he probably is overall, and I think that he will again be that next season. I'm glad that he decided not to retire and that I'll be able to see him play again next year. I think he's well on his pace if he plays a few more years in going into the Hall of Fame, to be quite honest. At number 28, we have Zach Martin, another Dallas Cowboy, offensive lineman, number 4, and guard number 2 on the top 100. Zach Martin is arguably the best guard in the league. He's definitely one of the best run-blocking offensive linemen in the league. A lot of times you saw Ezekiel Elliott run behind this guy, and for good reason. He's a great pull guard. He's great in the run game. He's good in the pass game. But he's so explosive, so physical, and he rarely gets beat. He rarely ever allows a defensive lineman to shed him and get a tackle. I think Zach Martin, again, ranking as one of Pro Football Focus's best guards and best offensive linemen, again on my list as one of the elite ones in the league again. I expect him, just entering the prime of his career, to only get better at this point. At number 27, I have AJ Green, wide receiver number 4 from the Cincinnati Bengals. He played 10 games last year, had 66 receptions, 964 yards, and 4 touchdowns with a 14.6 yards per carry. If you think about that, he almost had 1,000 yards in 10 games. That is, if you can do math correctly, that's almost 100 yards per game. And I'm pretty sure that in one of those games, he did get hurt early. So he could have arguably had 1,000 yards in 10 games. AJ Green, I think until this year, had 1,000 yards every single year of his career, which is absolutely nuts. And AJ Green is probably one of the most underrated players in the league for being so elite for every single year that he's played and still not getting really recognized as an elite receiver. That's like ridiculous to me. AJ Green, when he's on, he's probably one of the most physically gifted receivers in the league. I think he's right there with Julio Jones as the most physically gifted receiver in the entire league. You could put maybe Odell Beckham in that conversation as well, but I think he is even better than Antonio Brown in terms of physical ability. He's so big, he's fast, he can leap over you and catch balls. He's probably one of the best in the league at balls in the air, one-on-one. And this is a receiver that we've seen can take over games. We've seen games where he can catch it over 3 guys for a Hail Mary. We've seen games where he's scored 3 touchdowns. We've seen games where he's had 200 yards. So AJ Green is still in that conversation of the top 4 wide receivers in the league, which I think separated him, Odell, Brown, and Julio are those 4 receivers that stand out amongst everybody else. At number 26, we have Chris Harris, cornerback number 2, 63 tackles, 11 pass deflection, 2 interceptions, and 1 forced fumble. Chris Harris, in my opinion, is the best slot corner and is not even like close in the entire NFL. He can shut down any slot receiver in the league for the most part. Nobody really gives him troubles in that category. The only thing that really keeps him from being maybe the best is that he doesn't often play on the outside, which he can, but he's better in the slot. He's extremely good at tackling, which allows him to be such an elite slot corner, because when you're a slot corner and when you're consistently being in the slot, you're asked to not only shed blocks, a lot of times you're asked to tackle running backs, you're asked to tackle that slot receiver, that tight end, bigger players than you a lot of times, and Chris Harris can do that. He's also very good at tipping balls down with 11 this season. He can force fumbles. He can make plays. He can intercept passes. He can shut guys down. And he's one of the only elite shutdown corners in the entire league with the best tandem with Aqib Talib in the entire league. Chris Harris comes in as my number 2 cornerback in the NFL. At number 25, I have Derek Carr, quarterback number 5 on my top 100. He had nearly 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and a 96.7 passer rating. He was the elite guy that broke out this season. He was the quarterback that broke out, that put everybody on notice. Arguably one of the MVP candidates this season. I had him as the mid-season MVP. That's how impressed I was through 8 weeks with Derek Carr's play. I think Derek Carr has the ability to be the next Aaron Rodgers. He has so much physical ability. He really trains hard. He works hard. He's all about the game. I think Derek Carr is going to be elite in this league. He already basically is, being the quarterback 5 in this league, but I think you could see Derek Carr be the best quarterback in the league in a couple of years. He has that type of ability. He can run. He can throw. He can throw on the run. He can make plays by himself. It doesn't really matter who's in front of him. It doesn't really matter who's throwing to. Derek Carr is that type of talent where it doesn't matter what team he's on. He's going to get it done. He definitely had a breakout season this year. I think he'll bounce back from that injury, have an even better season this year, and be, again, one of the MVPs of the league. At number 24, I have the best offensive lineman for the Dallas Cowboys this season, and the best center in the league, which is Travis Fredrick. Pro Football Focus ranked Travis Fredrick, I believe, as the second best offensive lineman in the league and also the best center in the league. Travis Fredrick overall is flawless in his ability. Last year, he was flawless. I mean, you saw Ezekiel Elliott go off. You saw Dak Prescott go off. You saw Travis Fredrick lead a team and lead the adjustments on the offensive line. That's the most impressive part about Travis Fredrick, is he can make those adjustments on the offensive line and allow rookie quarterbacks and rookie running backs to succeed. In a big way, a lot of the elite centers in the league in the past have been able to have that same quality. Travis Fredrick has that, and he's that leader of the offensive line. So I have Travis Fredrick as the best center in the league and the best Dallas Cowboy offensive lineman this season at number 24. At number 23, I may shock some people with this, but to be quite honest, just turn on the highlights. Like, turn on the highlights, turn on the tape, turn on even the divisional game against the Patriots. Jadeveon Clowney, in my opinion, is a top 5 defensive player in the league. He's so good. He's edge number 3 in the league this year. 52 tackles, 6 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Just elite skill. He's probably going to get over 10 sacks next year. You turn on the tape, and he's probably the most explosive defensive player in the entire league. He jumps off the line. He can kill a tackle. He can kill a quarterback when he gets to him. He can force fumbles. He can tip down passes. He can even play in coverage and cover a tight end. He can play in coverage, play zone. He can blitz from the middle of a defense. He can blitz from the side. He can rush from the side. He can play DN. He could play D tackle maybe. I mean, the guy is an absolute freak. He could probably play corner. The guy is so freakish in his ability that I'm so confident that Jadeveon Clowney might even be the defensive player of the year next year. That is how good I think this guy is, and that's how good that the tape showed he was this past season. And just turn on a Texans tape. You wonder why the Texans had the number 1 defense in the league without J.J. Watt. It's Jadeveon Clowney. That's really the reason. That's why he comes in as number 23. At number 22, I have Trent Williams. In my opinion, the best tackle in the NFL for the Washington Redskins. Again, like Travis Fredrick, there's not a lot to say about this offensive lineman. He's just basically flawless. I mean, Trent Williams never gets beat. He's incredible at protecting his quarterback. It's part of the reason why Kirk Cousins is so successful in Washington as a quarterback. He doesn't have to worry about the blind side. He doesn't have to worry because Trent Williams is almost never going to get beat. And when he does, it's very rare. A lot of times it might be a penalty on the defense. Like, this guy is shaping up to be a Pro Football Hall of Fame quality of tackle. He's been a top 5 tackle for probably the last 3 or 4 years in the NFL. Great in both the pass and run games. He opens up lanes for no matter who the running back is. He's allowed Kirk Cousins in a way to succeed. And again, I think he'll be amongst the top 5 linemen next year, ranking him here as number 2 on the top 100. At number 21, I have Bobby Wagner. This is the last player on this episode of the top 100. Linebacker number 2 on the top 100, 167 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and an interception last year. Bobby Wagner was simply the best linebacker in the league last year inside a defense, a middle linebacker, I should say. There's nothing I could say about Bobby Wagner that he can't do. Bobby Wagner can blitz. He proved that last year. 4.5 sacks. He can rush. He can get by a guard. He can get by a center when you ask him to. You can probably line him out on the outside. But the most impressive thing about Bobby Wagner is his smarts, his intelligence, and his ability to succeed in that scheme. That linebacker position in that scheme, that cover 3 is asked to do a lot. Not quite as much as a cover 2 linebacker would be asked to do, but just look at how many tackles the guy was asked to have. I mean, he had 167 tackles, led the entire NFL in tackles, had an interception, great in coverage. I always think back to Bobby Wagner in that Super Bowl 49 with that interception on Tom Brady covering Rob Gronkowski. Phenomenal interception. He baited Brady into that. And he's even gotten better in that category this year. This is the best season of his career. I think he's just in his prime now. He's going to have another great year next year. He's developed more of an all-around game when it comes to coverage, when it comes to tackling, when it comes to run support, when it comes to coverage. Bobby Wagner can do it all, and I wouldn't know why you wouldn't want this guy on your team as your middle linebacker. Bobby Wagner comes in as the last player on this episode of the Top 100 as the linebacker number 2 and number 21 on the Top 100. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Top 100 players of 2017 from Mitch of the Bottom Line View. Let me know what you guys thought. Did I miss anyone? Are you excited to see the top 20? Who are your guesses for the top 20 guys left on the Top 100? And who do you think will be in the top 5? Let me know. It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View. Thanks, guys, for watching, and deuces.